Okay, so for this assignment, what you're going to do is you're going to make up two different research designs. One for the first half of the assignment, number one, and the second for the second half of the assignment. You're going to see how those differ as we go through when I introduce the concept of homogeneity of variance. When you make the two different examples, though, however, I want you to see that there is a very important requirement, and you can lose points if you don't meet this requirement. You must do one of these three things. You have to either change the independent variable, change the dependent variable, or change both the independent and dependent. You cannot use the exact same variables going from the first example you're coming up with and the second example. So to run through an example of what I'd expect for the first. Here you have the researcher wishes to determine if difference exists between the grade point averages of male and female graduate students. Here, the independent variable here is gender. Gender has two levels, so that's going to meet a t-test because two levels require that you compare two group means, and subjects are measured under only one level of measurement. What that means is we have an independent groups design. They are measured once and only once. We're going to see the opposite of that happen where you can compare somebody at time 1 to time 2 when we get to our next lecture with repeated measures t-tests. In this situation, our dependent variable is GPA. GPA, for the most part, we're going to call it an interval level of measurement. There's an argument that could be made that it's ratio, but we're going to call it an interval level of measurement. The rationale for this design, remember you really want to break apart the rationales so that you fully understand how each of the components work for the t-test. This design, and when I ask you for a rationale in the homework, make sure you really follow through these steps. This design is an independent groups t-test because the first part, only two levels exist, and the two levels are male and female, thus a t-test is appropriate. Participants are tested independently under only one level. You can't be both male and female, thus an independent groups t-test is appropriate. And typically there would be a third part that would say, since we have an interval level of measurement, this is a parametric. So you're going to see that line show up in future lectures. I apparently dropped it out of the slides this time around. Oh, no, he just jumped onto the next slide. So we already talked about why it was a t-test, because it had two levels. We also talked about that it was independent groups because males and females are two separate groups. Now we're talking about why it is a parametric statistic. And it's a parametric statistic because you have an interval or ratio level of measurement. In this place, grade point average has a standardized unit of measure but no meaningful zero. So you're going to start off by stating your hypotheses. These formats are the exact same formats that we have used in the prior assignment. So your substantive, female graduate students are expected to have a higher grade point average than male graduate students. The statistical, no significant mean difference will exist between the grade point averages of male and female grad students. And then this third one, unfortunately, the app that I'm using to do this is turning these into M's, and they're not M's. What they really are is the Greek letter mu, just like in our previous assignment. So the mu for females is equal to the mu for males is our null hypothesis, and then we have the two alternatives. Females could be higher or females could be lower. Remember in each of your hypotheses to include each level of the independent variable, males and females, the participants, in this case graduate students, the direction, higher or lower, and in the statistical hypothesis, make sure you include the statistical jargon. So for the remainder of this I'm going to introduce this concept of basic assumptions. All inferential statistics have basic assumptions. Think of a basic assumption almost like a prerequisite. It's the guideline that a researcher has to follow when deciding whether or not a specific analysis is appropriate for a design. So there's statistical analysis, and then there's research designs. And the idea is that we want to try to match those two. And we do that by reviewing the basic assumptions. Often statistical assumptions will pertain to the following characteristics. It could be the level of measurement. It could be how the participants were tested under the conditions of the independent variable. This is usually related to type of independent variable, or other specific or special considerations. I'm about to introduce in the third video one of the special considerations of an independent group's t-test.